Hello viewers, this Too Fast here. In today's video, I'll show you how to do a transmission fluid drain and fill on this Honda Odyssey with a 10-speed transmission. Now the service I'm about to show you is only for the 10-speed and not the 9-speed transmission. I'll talk more about that in a second. I will show you every step from beginning to end, so make sure you watch the entire video. Let's get started. Now before I begin, I want to take a second to talk about the different transmissions available on the 5th gen Honda Odyssey. This generation of Honda Odyssey came out in 2018, and for the model year 2018 to 2019, if you own the LX, EX, or EXL, those three models came with a 9-speed ZF transmission. But if you have a Touring or Elite model, those came with a 10-speed automatic transmission. And starting in 2020 and newer, all Honda Odysseys are built with a 10-speed transmission. The service procedures between the 9-speed and the 10-speed transmission are different, and the 10-speed uses the Honda ATF 2.0 transmission fluid, whereas the 9-speed ZF transmission uses the ATF Type 3.1 transmission fluid. So even the fluids are different between the two. On this 2019 Honda Odyssey Elite model that I'm working on, at 46,000 miles, the maintenance minder came up with a service code A137. If you look up the definition of the code, A is for oil change, 1 is for tire rotation, 3 is to replace the transmission fluid, and 7 is to replace the brake fluid. So it's time to do the transmission fluid change on this vehicle. The procedure that I'll show you in this video is for the 10-speed transmission. Now to do this service, you do have to go underneath the vehicle to access the drain plug, fill plug, and the level check plug. And both the front and back of the vehicle need to be leveled when you're checking the fluid level. One way is to put all four corners of the vehicle on jack stands. Now for me, I'm going to drive the front of the vehicle up on ramps and then jack up the back end and then put on jack stands. You can raise the vehicle however you want, but again, the vehicle needs to be leveled when checking the fluid level. Here you see the front end is on ramps now. Underneath the back of the vehicle, there is a cross member that you can use as a lift point to jack up the back of the car. Place jack stands underneath the pinch well. Now lower the back of the car onto jack stands. Now the car is raised and I can go underneath and do the work. Right here you're looking at the front of the vehicle, and let's go underneath. You see there's a black plastic shield, and right next to it there's also a silver metal shield. You need to remove both of these shields, and these shields are held in with 10mm bolts, Phillips screws, and plastic clips. The drain bolt that you need to access is underneath that metal shield. So as you might have seen, there are a lot of 10mm bolts and a bunch of clips, and also a couple of Phillips screws. All I can say is not fun removing it, especially if you're crawling underneath the car. But you definitely want to make a note of where these bolts go. Some of these bolts are black, some of them are silver, and you don't want to mix it up. And to help you guys with this, I put together a diagram showing you where all the bolts and clips go. So if you need a point of reference, just pause this video and make a note of where everything goes. This one here is a black plastic splash shield. And this diagram is for the silver metal splash guard. So let me show you where the transmission fluid drain plug and the transmission fluid check level plug is. Now as a point of reference, the exhaust pipe is right here, and the driver's side is to the right, and the passenger side is to the left. Now if I bring my camera underneath the vehicle, see the square notch right here? Right above that, there's a 12mm bolt. That is the fluid level check bolt. Now, over here, you see a bigger bolt. That's a 17mm bolt. That one is a transmission fluid fill plug. Now, before you begin this job, make sure you're able to remove that 17mm bolt because you don't want to drain all the fluid out and then find out you cannot get the fluid back in. As you can see, it's very tight. It's hard to film this, but I'm going to go ahead and loosen both bolts. But the first thing I'm going to do is loosen the 17mm bolt. So here I'm using this ratchet with a 17mm socket placed onto that bolt. Now I'll go ahead and loosen it. And let me show you where the drain plug is for the transmission fluid. Right here is a transmission, and the drain plug is this bolt right here. Now to remove this, you need a 3/8 inch ratchet. Put a drain pan underneath. Now you can remove the drain bolt. Here's a look at the drain plug. Now at the end of this bolt, there's a magnet, and that black sludge you see at the end is actually metal shaving from the transmission. So go ahead and get a towel and wipe this off. Now on this vehicle, when I removed the drain bolt, the crush washer actually got stuck on the transmission. And I don't know if you can see it, but the washer is actually on there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that right now. And here I have a new crush washer. Make sure you replace it with a new crush washer. So here I'll install the new crush washer. So the fluid drain took about 10 minutes and now you can see it's just dripping. And I'm going to reinstall the drain bolts. And you need to tighten this to 49 foot-pounds. And to clean this area up a little bit, I'm going to spray some brake clean. Now I'll remove the 17mm fill plug and put a funnel with an extension tube into that fill plug. And here's a fill plug. Here I'm attaching this hose to the end of this funnel. Now I'll be using this to fill the transmission fluid. From the top, I'm going to feed that tube down to the bottom. Going by feel, I'm going to feed that tube into the fill plug. And this is what it looks like right now. Now one thing to note is the tube actually doesn't go in a lot. I was able to push about 1 inch of the tube into that hole. I made a diagram to illustrate how you should position that fill tube into the fill hole. The picture on the left will show you how you should not place that tube. If you have that tube drooping down and back up into the fill hole, when you pour in the new fluid, you'll find that most of that fluid is going to just leak out and drip onto the ground. Now if you look at the picture on the right, the hose will come down and angle into the fill hole. This way, when you pour in the new transmission fluid, it'll run directly into the transmission and not have the fluid drip out of the fill hole. So if the hose you're using is very long, you may want to cut it back so there's not a lot of slack. Also, when you're pouring in the new fluid, you want to pour it slowly so it has time to go into the transmission. So let me show you how I routed the tube all the way down to the fill plug. Here's the funnel, and the tube goes down all the way into the fill hole. Now you want to make sure the tube is not too long so that there's a big bend at the bottom, because the fluid might leak out when you're pouring the fluid in. Now the length of the tube that I have here is 25 inch. Now besides filling the transmission fluid in the fill hole that I'm showing you, on the internet some people say there's an access hole you can get from the top of the transmission where you can fill that transmission fluid. Now in this video I'll show you the procedure that Honda has in their service manual, which uses the fill hole to put the automatic transmission fluid in. Now at the end of this video, I will show you where the access hole that some people are saying you can use to fill your transmission fluid. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that at the end of this video. So let me show you how much fluid came out of the transmission. Looking at the scale right here, this is 4.5 quart. And also let me show you the color of the transmission fluid. Now if it's a new fluid, it's a lot more clear. As you can see, this is more of a dark red color. Here is a transmission fluid that I'll be using for this 10-speed automatic transmission. It requires a Honda ATF Type 2.0 fluid. And since 4.5 quart of the fluid came out, I'll be putting in about 5 quart of fluid. That way when I start the car and warm up the transmission, there'll be some extra fluid coming out. With the ATF Type 2 fluid, it does tell you to shake well before using. So make sure you shake the bottle for about a minute before using it. Now I also put a drain pan underneath this area just in case if some of the fluid leaks out. Now I also put a drain pan underneath this area where the hose is, just in case if some of the fluid spill out. Here's the first bottle. Now pour in very slowly. And you want to double check to make sure the fluid is actually going into the transmission and not just dripping out. This is bottle number 2. Bottle number 3. Bottle number 4. And this is the 5th bottle, so that makes 5 quart of fluid I'm putting in. Keep in mind the fill plug also has a washer and it might be stuck on the transmission, but make sure you find it and you put this on. Here I will reuse the old washer. Now I'm going to reinstall the fill plug. Now that fill plug should be tightened to 44 foot-pounds, but you're not going to be able to put a torque wrench on it. So just do your best and tighten it so it won't come loose. So now I need to start the car and warm up the transmission fluid so I can check the fluid level. Now start the car. Just let the engine idle. With the engine warmed up, what you want to do is shift through all the gears on the transmission. So make sure your foot is on the brake. While you're holding the brake, put the car in reverse. Hold it for 3 seconds. Now put it into neutral and hold it for 3 seconds. Drive, hold it for 3 seconds. Press it once again and put it into S mode. Now change your gear using the paddle shifter. Manual 2. Manual 1. Press drive again. Back to neutral. Reverse. And park. Now you turn off the engine. Now to get to that 12mm fluid check level bolts, there's a bracket next to it. You can actually remove this bracket. It's held on by a 10mm bolt, and that'll give you more space to put a ratchet onto that 12mm bolt. And you just move this bracket out of the way. Now go ahead and remove the 12mm fluid level check bolts. Now be careful, the fluid is hot, and also put a drain pan underneath. Now initially there should be a thick stream of fluid coming out. Let it come out until it becomes a very thin stream. Depending on how much extra fluid you have, it could take 30 seconds to a minute. When the stream becomes very thin, go ahead and put the bolt back on. Getting that bolt back on is a pain in the butt, I'll tell you. Because the transmission is hot, the fluid's hot, You got the transmission fluid all over the place, and it makes it very slippery. The torque spec on that 12mm bolt is 20 foot-pounds. Again, you're not going to be able to fit a torque wrench on it, so just do your best to tighten it up. Wipe the area, make sure it's clean. Now before you close up, make sure you reinstall that bracket with a 10mm bolt. So during the fluid level check, this is the amount of fluid that came out. Now I can reinstall the splash shields. The service is complete. Now I can lower the car back down. So let me take a minute to show you where the other access hole is that other people online are saying you can use to refill the automatic transmission fluid. Now, if you look at the top of the engine, between this cover and the air intake, right here, at the bottom here you see this plastic black box. This is held on by two 10mm bolts, one on this side and one on the other side. Now this is actually a ventilation point for the transmission. It's not a sensor that some people claim it is. There's a vent pipe at the top, and if you remove those 10mm bolts, this whole thing can be lifted up, and that's where you can pour in your automatic transmission fluid. Now I've not tried it myself. The steps I showed you in this video is following the Honda service manual. That's why I filled it with a fill hole on the front of the transmission. But I thought I'd just point this out to you in case you might want to check this out. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you own this generation of Honda Odyssey and you want to do this service yourself, I hope the steps I showed you will be helpful. For a list of some of the parts and tools used in this video, check out the link below. If you have any questions or comments, leave one in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. To support this channel, remember to click on thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell so you get notified of new videos.